growing up, like just having him as a role model and like seeing that what he could do and what he had done really inspired me to be like an entertainer in my own
Yeah.
right? So
We've got Koji Aiken.
Remember when I took this video, I thought, a year from now, I'm going to be so different.
I didn't do it out of like any external motivation. It was not like, oh, like I'm gonna become a famous producer, or like I'm not gonna become the next David Guetta or anything. I did it simply because I was interested and curious and I wanted to learn how to do it. I did not. I pushed my body to the ground. Like there was, like looking back, like there was so many times where I just did not prioritize my health at all because I was like so ingrained in this like hustle culture, right? Yeah. From there, it's just been like a huge learning journey, but it's like not one that I'd ever expect. It's just lessons just keep come flying left, right, center, you know, between managing people, between building a community, balancing like my own like personal health and the health of everyone else, and just being super aware of like everything that's going around.
Thank you so much, Koji, for coming on the pod.
Thanks for having me.
I guess to start us off, I read more about your story, and I know growing up, your dad was a very big.
Okay, this man did his research. He did his research. Okay,
your dad is a big inspiration for you, right? I wanna take us a little bit back into what growing up was like, and your dad's story. I'm curious to learn more about your background there.
For sure, yeah. So for those who don't know, my dad was a juggler growing up by profession. So he got like dressed up in a. He's not like your traditional like clown or anything. He was like an entertainer, right? Street performer. So he went by the checkerboard guy, and just his whole kind of mantra with life of just doing whatever you want, like doing what makes you happy, and life will figure itself out. Like he really instilled that into me, and it really showed not just through words, but it was through his actions, right? Like he was a professional juggler, which is, I mean, unheard of as a career, right? Like not a lot of people. How many jugglers do you know, right? Professionally, and so growing up, like just having him as a role model and like seeing that what he could do and what he had done really inspired me to be like an entertainer in my own right? So growing up, like anytime I had like any sort of passion around entertainment, like I was a dancer for a little bit. I was like a street performer for a little bit. He was always so supportive and was like always like, whatever you need to make it happen, like let's do it. Like I really want to support you through it all, right? So having him as like I guess essentially my number one fan growing up was always like amazing. It was a great support system and really instilled a lot of like self-belief that I could do whatever it is that I wanted to do. Like I could figure out how to do it and do it. So
it's so nice to have that figure, right? Like I feel like a lot of people that we have talked to on the show, something that I've seen is that those early years in their life, and at that age you don't really realize it.
You don't know what's going on.
But it really shapes everything after, right? And whatever you see, the people that you're around with, your family, like it really shapes, I guess, your future after that.
Totally, yeah.
I know in high school you used to dance. You
I
mentioned
was
that
a dancer, back in high school.
Talk to me more about that. I wanna learn more about like dancing and how you got into it.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd say that's probably around like the first kind of real string of entertainment and music that I was getting into. Back then, it's like I knew I was super passionate about music, and it was around the time that like Skrillex was like really popping. So like dubstep was like a new discovery for all of us, and it was about grade 9 that, you know, me and my buddy Jaden at the time, we were like in our high school drama program or whatever, but like we kind of turned all of our like drama skits into like dance skits.
Nice.
Yeah, and we got picked up by this other group in the high school that was doing like dance program stuff. They're like, wow, you guys are wicked, like come on through, like let's like jam and whatnot. And then from there kind of just we started like a little like boys dance crew, and like became notorious in our high school for like being the guys that dance and whatever, because there was like 4 dancers and like, or 4 male dancers and like 30 female dancers or whatever. So it's like hard to miss us. And through that, it really gave me an ability. It was just crazy because it was the first time that I had like a creative pursuit that people around me started like supporting me for it, right? And it was like, it's not like I was going out being like, hey, like I'm a dancer, like check me out. It was like the first time that naturally people would be like, yo, like I saw your show. That was insane. I've never seen anything like that. And it really started kind of inspiring that whole, the entertainment aspect, and made me like, I guess like instilled in me my passion for entertaining people and stuff.
Yeah. In a lot of the conversations I've had, I've also seen this pattern of there's always that one friend that you sort of like do stuff with, and and especially at those very early days. Talk to me more about, I think you mentioned Jaden.
Jaden, my best friend Jaden. Yeah.
What was that relationship like? Like, Tell me more about Jaden.
Oh, it was so fun. Well, I'll tell you how we met. Like, so in I think it was in grade 8 or something. Like, we got mistaken for each other like quite often because we look pretty similar. Yeah. Right? Like, we could be brothers or whatever. Yeah. And there was this one girl. Her name was Julia. Comes up to me. He's like, Jaden, like, what's going on? And I'm just looking at her like, I'm not Jaden. Yeah. I didn't know who Jaden was at the time either, so I was just so confused. And then same thing happened to Jaden where he got mistook for me, and we ended up like linking up together, like face to face. And it was just like, dude, are you the clone of me or am I the clone of you? Like, what's going on here? Yeah. And so that kind of like started the friendship there, and immediately it was just like super lighthearted and fun. Yeah. And like we both were like really into similar things. He was actually the one that got me into dubstep. He was like, yo, check out this music. It's fresh on the scene. And I was just like, I've never heard anything like this before. This is crazy. So we kind of got into dancing together, and like we did everything together. We were like we were in the same grade, so like we had a couple classes together and stuff, and like we go out at lunchtime and just go to the candy shop, just like doing like regular high school stuff together. But like you said, attached, like very, very attached to the hip, very influenced by each other's kind of passions and whatnot, and like both of us were dancers. So growing up, like him and I like kind of led the dance program, and which is now, I think they have 2 actual classes of just male dancer, like male dance classes now. Yeah. So, I think just being able to have someone to work with like that and like bounce ideas off of is really, really helpful. And it's also nice because it's like you can, the weeks that you're like not feeling the greatest, like you can just be like, hey man, like, do you mind just like pulling a little extra up today for me? And he's just like, yeah, I got you. You know what I mean? So great to have a support system like that.
No, completely. Like, I definitely have had those people in my life at different points that, you have as
they all come in different shapes and sizes too, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I know when you were like 13, 14, you used to like busk. And I feel like first at that age, like that's quite commendable.
Thank you. Yeah, I felt like a clown back then.
But two, like, talk to me more about that. Like, what like, how do you get started there, and what were you thinking? Like, why would you busk, I guess?
Well, it was like, it goes back to my pops, right? Like, he was a huge influence in my life, and just seeing him like juggle and entertain people and make people laugh was like always something where I was just like, yeah, like I want to do that. I want to try it out. So the whole busking thing actually happened more in like high school. Like, we had this like annual talent show where, all the parents' kids would toss their kids. Yeah, everyone would do a little guitar piece or like a piano piece, a little dance thing. And it's like, I was always the one on a unicycle juggling in front of everyone. It was just ridiculous, right? So I think throughout high school, like, my dad kind of trained me to like get all these skills together. And elementary school. And after elementary school was done, he, he's just like, yeah, you have all the tools to like make a show. Like, why don't you go out there and like do a show? Like, I'll teach you how to do it. Yeah. So he took me out. Like, I was over in Lonsdale Key. There was like a little like there's like a little plaza out there that I'd go to, bring out a little speaker, get mic'd up and stuff, and do like a little show. And this is something that me and him like built together. So it was a very strong like father-son bonding moment. And as much fun as it was, like, the more I did it, the more I realized I was like, there's something I like about this, but I'm not sure what it is. But there's also something like I'm not, like, doesn't click with my character, my personality, right? So,
were there any like experiences or like one of the times that you remember or interactions that you had during then that you're like, whoa, like that happened, or that you look back to?
Honestly, like anytime I like look back and it's just like starting the show, because it's like I was a nervous train wreck, just like having to like create something out of nothing, right? Like, try and get people's attention in the public and stuff, and really just just like make a stance and be like, hey, like, watch what I'm doing something cool, like, let me entertain you, right? Like, it was just that mental barrier was definitely like the biggest challenge of that, I think. But in terms of actual like crazy things that happened, like, nothing really crazy happened. Like, I never got like heckled or anything, because like, who's gonna heckle a 14-year-old, right? Yeah. So all the shows themselves like went really, really successfully. But like I guess the craziest thing is I just don't really remember any of them, because I was just like so in the zone, and it's like I come out of it and I'm like, how was that, Dad? And he's like, tell me how it goes, and he's like, I don't remember any of it.
So. No, that's fair. I mean, but it's so nice to hear. I mean, like, how I guess busking really, it gave you that experience, and it I guess taught you this idea of like entertaining and creating those experiences for people, which I think
that's definitely the biggest thing that I got out of it, was like the love for entertaining, right? Like I mentioned, there was something about it that I loved, which was the entertainment aspect, like going in front of people, showing them a talent that you like had like worked on a while, but like just being a busker just didn't really line up with who I was. And it was also around the time that like I was discovering my passion for music. So it was just like a whole mix of just like, you know, a 14-year-old, you're not supposed to know who you are or anything, right? So it was just trying all these different things. And it wasn't until like university where like the entertainment and music like really started to come together.
Yeah, and that's a great segue for my next question.
Yeah.
When I was reading one of the interviews you did, and I really loved how you described your journey in like 3 versions.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
Oh, the 3 versions of Kumo, right? Yeah, totally.
And talk to me about that, but also your start in music. You said you went to university, then I think you went to UBC, right?
Yeah, I went to UBC for kinesiology.
Exactly.
So something completely different.
Exactly. Talk to me about like what was going through your headspace, like where were you at in terms of music at that bit?
Yeah.
And what was your like mindset like going into university?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I think everyone can agree that like the transition from like out of high school into like whatever you do, whether it's university or like you just go to work, you go like travel and stuff, is a huge step, right? It's the first kind of like steps of independence.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a period of time where like I had a lot of freedom to like figure out who I was. Like a lot of the identity that I created for myself in high school, like didn't really translate well. Like I was a football player, but like I wasn't gonna go kill myself playing against kids who were like twice my size, right? So I was like, football's not really something I want to do. Dancing was like always something that like I liked, but like I never had like any formal training, so I wasn't comfortable in like a studio or working with a group. So I was like trying to find different ways to do that, but the community wasn't that like crazy. And in the midst of it all, like I remember, I think I was just like out in the woods with my friends or something, and I kind of like had an epiphany where I was just like, and I was listening to Kid Cudi too. So I was listening to Kid Cudi and I was listening to all the sounds and stuff. And I was like, it's really cool. Like, I wonder how he made this. And like, I pondered on the thought a little bit. And I was like, like if I really wanted to figure out how to do this, I probably could.
Yeah.
Right. So that night I went home, downloaded the music program, started playing around with it. And I was like immersed. Like I was addicted to it. I couldn't like for a whole month before I started university, like every day, 8 hours a day, just on the computer, like trying to tinker around, like trying to figure out all this. And it wasn't like, I didn't do it out of like any external motivation. It was not like, oh, like I'm gonna become a famous producer, or like I'm not gonna become the next David Guetta or anything. I did it simply because I was interested and curious and I wanted to learn how to do it. And I think through that process, it made me really realize, oh, like I really have a deeply ingrained passion for music, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously going into university, I couldn't really do it as much because like the chaos of like learning how to like adapt and whatnot. Yeah. But through the university experience, I met this guy named Brent Mosher, who at one of the it was like the I can't say the kin retreat for the first years, we'll say that. I was, I brought my dancing skills onto the dance floor in the middle of the forest or whatever, just throwing down. And Brent, who was the DJ of that event, comes up to me. He's like, hey man, like you got some like wicked moves. Like you should become friends or something, just start doing like a little DJ dancer duo. And then from there, brought me into his house, saw his decks, and I was like, can I try that? And he's like, go for it. And then from there, it's a similar thing with the music where it's like, as soon as I started touching the decks, I was fully immersed into it. I was so into it, like everything around the world melted away. Didn't worry about the midterms I had next week. Didn't have to worry about like the friends that I made. It was like all just in the moment. And it was like, I think a lot of people like don't really recognize that when you get that feeling, like that is something that is like a true sense of passion when you do it just for the sake of doing it, right?
Yeah, and at that point, as you mentioned, like you weren't thinking like long term or like what am I gonna get with this? Like you genuinely enjoyed that.
Yeah, I just loved it. Yeah.
I'm curious to learn more about that interaction. I know you mentioned, I don't know if I think you mentioned Brent.
Brent, yeah. DJ Demo, yeah.
DJ Demo. So that's the name I have.
Demo, yeah.
Yeah, and so talk to me more about that interaction and from that point, because that's like a very, like it's a turning point, sort of like.
Huge turning point, yeah.
He sees what you're doing, like you're dancing, he sees you have a good energy, like.
That's what it was,
and he's like, yo, like, I love to, introduce you to like this world of DJing.
Totally, yeah.
Talk to me more about that experience, and after that, like, yes, you can have that interaction, right? And you, like a lot of people do have those interactions, but like, how do you make that into something,
Yeah, well, I was extremely fortunate to have Brent. Brent was also at the time working with this event group called The Calendar.
Nice.
And so he had it in with those guys, and he kind of just like took me under his wing for that summer or whenever he kind of introduced to me. And he was like, had me like opening all of his shows. Like he was obviously the main act, headliner or whatever. But like through that summer, he'd always have me open like 10, what was it? It was 9 to 11.
Nice.
So for the first hour, like he didn't have to worry about me because there was no one there, right? Like you can just like let him do his thing, and then he'd come and like monitor me for a little bit, like kind of give me tips here and there, and be like, oh, you should like think about this, think about that. So he was like very much like a mentor for me. And you know, after his term as, I don't know, he was a talent manager at the time. So I took his role once the new school year started.
Nice.
And then I was in that role for a year, and then afterwards I became the event director for the calendar. Yeah. And so it was just like a natural progression of like getting more involved with working with an event company. But the motivation behind that was to give myself more shows, because it was just like I just wanted to DJ. Exactly. I didn't care how I got there. I didn't care about how much work I needed to do. It was more just like, okay, like how do I get myself my next show?
Yeah. I'm curious to learn more about like, I really want to paint a picture on what your life was like at that time, because you were still at school.
I was still a student.
And then you're obviously doing like calendar stuff, and you're also DJing and doing events. What was your life like then? Like how are you, I guess, juggling all these things at the same time, doing school and everything else that you're involved in?
Yeah, I would say it forced me to learn time management, right? Like obviously, like when you have that many things juggling, or when you're juggling that many things, you got to be able to know, like, do I have time for this, or like what needs to go where, and like where do I need to be at what time. So I got really good at using my calendar and coming up with a system for myself where, you know, like I would literally every week I would go and like just fill out my week with like everything that I needed to do. So like I didn't have to worry about it. Right. So I started doing that, and then that kind of expanded when I started getting like booked for like gigs in a month in advance, right? Then you just like throw it in the calendar, forget about it, and then week of you're like, oh, I have a show here, right? Like it's nice. You don't have to like worry about it too much. So yeah, just developing that kind of system of time management for myself really kind of helped me manage everything. And also it was also nice because it was like I look back on it, and it was just like, if I go back to like my little like sections, like I had class here, I had DJing sessions here, like I had a meeting here or whatever, it's like I like looked back at the things that like almost had like an emotional reflection where I was just like, okay, like these things made me happy, these things didn't, right? So then after university, it was like really easy to like cut out all the things I didn't like, and then also just focus more on the things that I did like, right?
Makes sense.
A lot of self-learning.
Yeah. I'm curious to learn more about like your relationship with school, because I know a lot of people that are probably listening are probably at that point where, you know, they know that they have this passion and they want to do something, but obviously like they will still want to be in school and I guess finish their degree and stuff. What was your relationship like with school? And like what was going through your head at that time in terms of school?
Well, when I first started DJing, I didn't really think it would be like a full-on career path or anything. It was just like a hobby that I was doing, right? So, but it was also something that like I was always trying to fit into the schedule, right? So school for me at that time was, it was just something like I think a lot of it was just me learning about myself and developing myself in the areas that I had worked in, right? Because I wasn't just like an event director, I wasn't just a DJ. I was also really involved in my fraternity at the time. I was also really involved with my faculty doing stuff like I think I was a VP student events for the Kinesiology Undergraduate Society too. So like I was multifaceted, like all over the place, and just trying to like just make sure like everything was juggled. But I did realize that if I wasn't in school, a lot of the opportunities that made me who I am today aren't like I wouldn't have the skills, right? Like even inside the classroom, like some of the stuff that I was learning in the classroom like didn't directly apply to like my whole like DJ path, but it taught me like discipline, right? Like it taught me deadlines, it taught me things like project management, like figuring out, okay, I have this much time to get this project done, how much time do I have to actually do it, right? So I think my relationship with school was a good one in the sense that I used it as an opportunity to learn and grow as an individual when it didn't directly relate to what I wanted to do, right? But like now I look back at it and I'm just like, oh my God, thank goodness I went to all those 8 a.m. classes, because now it taught me discipline, right? Like now it's like if I had a meeting at 8 a.m., it's like I know what it takes to get up at 7:30 and get to that meeting, right? So I think, like for a lot of creatives and stuff, like don't take school for granted, because there's a lot of like hidden messages and hidden lessons to be learned there that you might not realize will help you down the line, like 5 years down the line, right? So,
I think that's such a great way to look at it. And like I'm taking notes right now, mental notes, because I'm in school right now, and I'm always like, I'm not trying to go to class, or I'm not trying to, like I want to do other stuff outside of class. So it's always like, I feel like looking at it from this perspective really changes things, because there's so much that you can learn from school that you say will apply to you later on in life. And also this idea of like, I don't know, like making most of the opportunities available and the experiences that you can. So as you said, you're part of like the fraternity, you're part of like your like KUS, you're part of
everything,
all these different opportunities. And where else do you meet all these different people or have all these opportunities if not like in university, right?
Totally right. Yeah, like because I was a KUS VP student life, the current KUS is booking me for their shows, for their events now, because they knew I was in Kin and I have a close ties there, right? So, but I like never would have known that like when I was VP student life that these opportunities would arise.
Exactly.
And it actually had like a really cool thought too. It's like one of the biggest lessons that I learned inside of the classroom was, every professor is different, right? And every professor has different expectations, especially when it comes to midterms, right? So I really learned what the professor wanted to hear or see on these midterms. And then on the midterm, it was like super easy for me to be like, okay, like this question is asking this information and I know the professor is going to want to answer this way. So when you like mix the two, then it's like you have the correct answer. Because I'm sure we can all agree that you've put down a picture perfect answer and you've gotten like 1 out of 5 on there, right? So it's really about, what that taught me was expectations of the people that you're, I guess, working for, right? Or like if you're doing a midterm, you're technically doing the midterm for the professor. Same thing goes to like in any sort of like business thing. It's like you have to understand who you're working for and be able to deliver what they want, what their expectations are.
Yeah, and thinking about that, like in DJing or even in events, like that's what you need to think about, right? Like what does the audience want and what is the vibe right now, and like give them that experience and create it for them. So
exactly,
it's nice to see how you made that connection and the fact that you thought about that.
It's just people skills, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying that bit of the podcast. I was hoping if you can potentially leave a review or subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're listening on YouTube. It would honestly mean the world, and this will help us to reach to more people and have that impact that we want to have. Thank you. Something I did want to touch on is when you were in university and you were doing all of these things, going to class, DJing, doing events, doing the calendar, and everything else. It's sometimes hard, like
extremely
in terms of even like keeping up with like that next thing or the next party or the next like you'd be partying at night up to like 2-3 a.m. and then wake up for class at like 8 a.m. in the morning.
7, 8,
and
it was ridiculous.
How did you go about that? Like how did you manage to, I guess you did talk about like the importance of time management and stuff, but also for your own well-being, like how would you keep up with that? Obviously, like in partying and stuff, like there's also like a lot of drinking and a lot of like energy even involved, right? So how did you keep up with that?
I did not. I pushed my body to the ground. Like there was, like looking back, like there was so many times where I just did not prioritize my health at all because I was like so ingrained in this like hustle culture, right? And I think that's something that a lot of people get lost in today, like especially like as a creative, like you have to do so much to just keep your project alive, right? That you do forget to take care of yourself sometimes. And I honestly think like if you are like an entrepreneur, like a creative or anything in that space, it's like it's something that you have to learn is self-care. Like now I'm a lot more aware of like how I feel internally, and when my energy levels are low, like last week I had to clear my whole schedule because I was like, you know what, this is going to be a week where like I don't feel like doing anything, right? So just being like, it really comes down to like a level of self-awareness of yourself and what you're capable of, and understanding that like, if you have too many eggs in the basket, some of them are going to fall out, right? I like to call them selective failures. Essentially, it's like, when you have 10 things to do in a week, but you can only do 8, like what are the 2 things you're going to give up, right? Or like what are the 2 things that need to be sacrificed for your capacity, right? Because I remember it was in first term of 3rd year where like I just killed myself working. It was a peak of me figuring out, like it was right when DJ gigs were starting to come up, but I was still doing like 5 classes a semester, and I was involved in like extracurriculars and stuff, and I just didn't have the bandwidth for it. And it's like I came home after exam season, and my parents were like, they were shocked. They were like, oh my God, like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, Mom, like, what's going on? I'm completely fine. I ended up sleeping for 2 days straight, right? Like really just being self-aware and like learning that you do have boundaries for yourself and you can't push yourself to the ground even if you want to, right? It's not healthy.
I know. I completely get that. I mean, I had a very similar experience. Burnout is very common.
Very prevalent,
And especially I feel like we live in a time where like hustle culture is something that's like it's good and it's nice and that's what we should follow, and we see all these like people that we look up to, like I guess pushing this idea of hustle culture, right? So I went through an experience of like burnout. I think when I moved here, because during COVID, when everyone was, I guess, taking some time to themselves and taking a rest, like I was like, yo, I have so many more hours time, in the day. Like I'm gonna grind. Like I'm gonna be part of that 1% of people that, like, you know,
actually did something with
exactly.
Their time, right?
And I want to come out of COVID like being the guy that did all these cool things. But in reality, after when I went back to school in person, I just couldn't get out of bed. Like it was. The burnout was so real.
You killed yourself, right?
Exactly, yeah. Are there certain things that you do on like a day-to-day or week-to-week basis that, you know, make sure I can clearly tell that you're very self-aware, and that's something that you know, prioritize, and you really try to check in with yourself?
Totally, yeah.
I feel like that's obviously easier said than done, and when you're like doing your day-to-day stuff, it's hard to take out that time to even, you know, like sit down and think about it.
Right.
What are some like things that you do to make sure, you know, you're keeping yourself in check and taking care of yourself?
Well, let me go back to the whole calendar thing, where I spent like every Sunday I sit down. I have kind of like 4 pillars of my life that I do. One of them is like music and DJing. One of them is Kumo, which is my events company. One of them is work, like the work that I have to do, like my day job and stuff. And then the other one is just like my health and well-being, right? So every Sunday I'll sit down and write 3 goals that I want to achieve under each of those pillars, I call them, for the week, right? So maybe under DJing and music, it's like I have 2 gigs. All right, boom, I gotta do these 2 gigs, right? And back when like I was just figuring out this system, I also added a little like point underneath where I could just like write down how I was generally feeling, and like, you know, whether it was like physical health, mental health, like spiritual health, any sort of like health, like I could write down like, okay, like this week I'd write it as a percentage, right? Like, so this week going into the week, I feel like maybe 60% capacity, right? And then that would inform me of how hard I wanted to go with my goals, right? So I think, yeah, just that practice of like checking in with yourself, like just giving yourself like 5 minutes to like journal. Like I think journaling is really important. If you're not like a journaler, just like voice memo yourself and just find a way to like get your current internal state out so that you can reflect back on it. Cause it's like speaking it and hearing it is 2 completely different things. So like writing it down and like seeing it on paper is 2 completely different things. And I think it's a lot easier for you to be like easier on yourself if you can hear yourself talking like, yeah, like this week has been awful. Like I'm honestly writing it at 30%. Like my dog died or whatever. Like I really need some time to like reflect and just like grieve and stuff. And then it's like if you can hear yourself talking about that, it's a lot easier to be a little bit more cognizant of your energy levels and be like, okay, yeah, honestly, like I don't need to get 12 things done. Maybe I only need to get 5 things done, right? So yeah, just practicing that self-awareness in that sense where you just like kind of like find a way to communicate to yourself, right? Or like whether it's writing it down or just like a voice memo or like whatever it is. You know? Just having like some way to like reflect to yourself and like understand where you are currently at in life. Because I think a lot of these kids, like I talk to them, they're like, oh, like I'm so fucking tired, but I got a midterm I got to go to, and I'm talking to them at a party. I'm just like, what are you doing here, right? Like, so yeah, like I'd say that.
I feel like I really love the way you do it, and the fact that you even gave us like some of these actionable steps that what people can actually do. And also what I really like is usually when people talk about balance or, you know, having these different pillars in your life, most people usually are like, I'm gonna give 100% in everything and gonna, I guess, expect like the outcomes to also be 100%, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for me, it's always like this idea of balance is like a myth in the sense that like you only have like so much capacity and it's all about priorities versus balance. So like if this week your priorities is more like DJing, then
you're gonna have like 5
the rest,
DJ gigs?
exactly, the rest has to, like, you have to, I guess, make that sacrifice. Exactly.
It's like selective failures, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I love that. I love that you, I guess, put it that way.
Yeah.
I'm curious to learn in your life right now, even talking about like your mental well-being, and I feel like accountability is a big one, right? Like for me, like I know all these things or whatever, but I struggle to, like, there are days where I struggle to hold myself accountable, and that is when like I lean on to like people in my life, either my best friends or you know, my parents, my family, my brother. How do you practice like that accountability, and 2, are there certain people in your life that you have that help you through the journey?
Oh yeah, no, I've got an amazing support network, and I think that's like a really important underrated thing is to have all sorts of different people around you, right? Like I've got my little brother who I live with who is extremely empathetic, and I feel like I can talk to him about anything, and he doesn't ever like, it's never like in a judgmental tone.
Yeah.
It's never like, it's always like, okay, yeah, like this is what you're feeling right now.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of like a feedback thing, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like if I go to my dad, he's like a very emotional, like very like empowering, very like hype you up kind of person. So like if I'm feeling down and I need to go do like a gig or something, give him a quick call and he's just like, yeah, dude, you're going to kill it, man. You're going to do great. And I'm just like, you know what? I am going to kill it. Right? You know? And then, then there's other people on my team who, I like, this is another big thing that is like I'm learning is just delegation and stuff, and like delegating some things in your task, right? Like if there I'm sure there's like 20 tasks in your life that you could easily, if you had the right person, just give it to them and get them handled, right? So delegation's a big thing. And then in terms of accountability and stuff, it's it just goes back to like self-awareness, right? Like understanding that anything that you want to do in your life, you are responsible for. You can't pin the blame on anyone else, because then you lose that sense of control in your life, which then obviously makes you feel awful, right? You have no control of your life. You don't know what's going on. Like, you feel like you can't really have a handle to like get your life back on track, when in reality it's like if you just look at the problem and you're like, oh yeah, I caused that problem, or like, oh yeah, like this issue is because of what I did, and then you really really like absorb that, then you can realize, okay, like I caused this problem, how can I solve this, what's the solution and how can I attain it, right? Like I think just being accountable for yourself and like really being self-aware that everything around you is affected by your actions, and if you aren't willing to come to terms with that fact that everything is your fault, you are going to struggle and have a difficult time with dealing with a lot of these things.
I love that. You put that so well. I think, like from the people in your life to delegating and having a good team, and that's what makes a great leader, you know, like.
Thank you.
And having the right people in your team as well, and then also coming back to yourself and holding yourself accountable and having that sense of control in your life. I think it's so powerful. Going back to your journey. Yeah. So right now we are at you are at school.
I graduated.
No, not right now, but in what you have already shared.
Oh yeah. I was in school.
You were at school at that point.
Yeah.
You're doing like calendar. You're starting to do gigs. You're opening. How do we go from there to I guess the idea of Event Kumo in the first place? Talk to me more about that shift and that. Yeah.
Okay, so I was I love talking about this because everyone thinks Kumo is like this big community thing. Yeah. Like I did it to like build the scene or whatever. Yeah. But like when I first started Kumo, it was actually a very, very selfish reason. It was because I wanted more gigs. I felt like at the time, like I was super brash and just very, very full of myself. And I was like, yeah, I deserve all the gigs in the city and whatnot. Like how come no one's giving me these gigs? So I was like, okay, well, like, let's just create an event company and just create my own gigs, right? Yeah. So it started out, I got offered a residency over at Library Square in the summer of 2019. And from there, like, I just applied everything that I knew about working with the calendar and working with this other group, The Plug, and just, like, all my event work. It's like I try to conglomerate it all and create my own thing. I pretty much just took the things that I loved the most out of all these different, like, groups and stuff and put it into my own thing. Yeah. And I failed miserably that summer. Like I call it Kumo V1 because it's like looking back at that, it was an absolute train wreck. Like I think for the entire summer that I played there, I think the most people that I had in there was like maybe 50 people. It was like a 300-person venue. So it was like very, very humbling, you know, very, very humbling. And so that made me realize, I was like, and then I went back to school. I didn't have time to do it again. I was just like, you know what, like screw this. We'll take a step back from this and revisit it later. And then the whole idea behind it was so that I could create gigs for myself or create opportunities for myself. And then Kumo V2 was when we were doing a collaboration with The Plug at Kerner's, and we were doing the Wednesday nights there. So that was like the kind of first time we actually had some success. We actually had bodies in the room. Yeah. We were creating a vibe. We were creating a community and a culture around that night. And then obviously like COVID hit, just swept us under the rug, right? Yeah. And so we had to take a pause on that. And then that summer, the summer that COVID really, this quarantine really struck for the first time, I like sat with my thoughts and really, it was like high school where it's just like everything was cleared off the table. Like I just graduated university. All my gigs were gone. I had a girlfriend that I had broken up with at the time. Wow. So I was having a huge identity crisis back then, and it made me like really sit down and gave me the space to like figure out what it was that I was really truly passionate about. And like you said, you know, COVID was a time where like a lot of people could like relax and chill. Yeah. And me being the ambitious person that I was like, I can't sit still and do nothing. Exactly. Like I did for a couple of weeks. I won't lie. Everyone did, right? But yeah, after that first couple of months, I was like really getting antsy and like I felt like I needed to do something. And so I got an opportunity to work at a multimedia creative studio called Studio 710 and do DJ live streams out of there. Nice. And from there, it was like a very similar thing where it's like you can have gigs, but like how can we create opportunities for ourselves as DJs? Live streams was a big thing at the time. So we had a great opportunity to work out of that place. And that's kind of the birthplace of like the current version of Kumo, which is Kumo V3. And from there, it was just like, okay, like we have this space that we can use every week. I don't want to put myself on every week. Let's see like, if we can tap into the community and see how many people we can get on board. And I think that's when it really evolved from like a personal kind of passion into like a community passion or something that benefits everyone around us, right? Because it was the first time we started working with all these different styles of DJs, all electronic music, like really ingraining ourselves in the electronic music community. And like now looking back, like we book DJs like who are playing festivals now, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, we're friends with them and everything. And and it started building the current team out of that place too. And it just from there, it's just been a huge learning journey. But it's like not one that I'd ever expect. It's just lessons just keep flying left, right, center. You know, between managing people, between building a community, balancing like my own like personal health and the health of everyone else, and just being super aware of like everything that's going around. It's just a great opportunity now, and here we are today. You know what I mean?
You mentioned the word community a lot of times, and obviously like you do talk about, you know, from during COVID you were doing like live streams and stuff. Yeah. And then you talk about like creating this sense of community. I want to bridge the two and talk about like the actual like nitty gritty stuff. Like totally, how do you get from that? Cause obviously from the way you summed it up, like it's way more than that, I'm sure.
There's a lot.
So talk to me more about that journey and how you made that progress and even what does like community even mean to you?
Oh man, that's a great question. I think, I mean, for me, the way that I saw like the kind of whole thing that kind of kickstarted the whole community aspect and the community side of things was I really took a look at the Vancouver industry, especially in the electronic music industry, and it seems like there was always like one huge major player, which is Blueprint, right? And they were obviously doing a great job like booking shows, like booking major artists, but it kind of just didn't seem, and like they do bring in like local artists to like support and open, but like these openers that are coming in are like have been established, have been working with Blueprint, have been doing their thing for a couple of years, so like they have like a working relationship. And I look around at like some of the other smaller groups that were doing things, and like they're all doing great things like underground parties and stuff, but they were very, very to themselves and very like kind of same DJs, same people, like very like pocketed. And so, but like, and I saw an opportunity. I was just like, well, like, why don't we just become the person that kind of bridges the gap between all these smaller groups and Blueprint and like all the people that go to all these events and just kind of become like the central hub for electronic music culture in Vancouver. And when I kind of made that like mind frame switch, like all my decisions started to be guided by that principle, right? Like, how do we do things? Like, is what we're doing positively impacting the people around us and the people that we're trying to help? Which is obviously like mainly DJs and artists, but also like now it's starting to expand to like the general like just EDM fans and the community in Vancouver. I think it was just just that mind switch of like it becoming something for like a personal endeavor into something that benefits everyone. And I think like to your point, to your point about what community is to me, I think community is a group of people with a common interest and common goals that are all guided by similar principles that work towards like a target goal, right? Like for us, it's just, we want to help put Vancouver's electronic music scene on the map because there's so many talented artists, there's so many talented DJs, but there's not like a platform for them, right? Like a lot of them, like I'm talking to some of them, they're like, how do I get gigs? And I like go step by step, like how to get gigs, you know, go to the club, go to the bar or whatever, go meet the people that you need to meet, make a good impression, you know, show them that you can have value or you can add value to the night, and then ask. And everyone's like blown away by that. They're like, I would have never thought about that, right? So I think, yeah, just like there is a really not there just is a lack of general support for this community, and it's just like for me it was like that the community aspect being combined with seeing a way that we could support these artists and support the community and the scene. It just kind of like all conglomerated into what Kumo is now, right?
Yeah, and I'm curious to learn more about like deep down that why. Like, why is it that you want it? Like, you want to make that difference and provide that support, and also yes, you did see an opportunity there. Because there wasn't people like bridging that gap.
Right.
But what was that like calling or that thing that was like, yo, like I'm gonna do this?
Yeah. So I got two answers for you for this one. So number one, growing up, I was growing up like as through my DJ career, I was extremely fortunate to have mentors like Brent, this other guy, Mr. Floetic, who like brought me into the like downtown of Vancouver, the general Vancouver scene, and just like working with all these different DJs. They really brought me under the wing and like really showed me the ropes and gave me opportunities that like I should have never gotten, right? Like I would keep getting gigs from people like out of the blue, and if it wasn't for what they had given to me, like I wouldn't be where I was today. So I felt like I almost owed it to the community to give back, because I'm at a point where I can give back, right? And I've built something that can give back to the community. So like I always say, it's like if you have the ability to help people, don't you have the moral responsibility to help people, right? Like help people around. And the second part is another thing that my dad instilled to me. He talks a lot about karma, and he's a very heavy believer in putting good into the world and you get good out. But his kind of mind frame around karma isn't that like everyone is a baseline. It's like he came in being born into such a fortunate life, and same thing with me. Like I came in with such a fortunate life, like with great parents, they're still married. A lot of people don't have married parents. Like I had a little brother, like a lot of people don't have siblings and stuff. So the way he frames it is just like, like you're like $100,000 in debt to the karma bank, and you have to spend the rest of your life doing good deeds to pay off that debt. So I figure this is like a great way for me to pay off that debt, because it's something that I'm personally like super inspired by and super passionate about. I know people around me are super inspired and passionate about, and if I can help those people like move forward in their like careers in music, then it's like that's me paying my debt to the karma bank.
Wow, that is so well put.
Thank you.
I feel like a lot of people, like, it's one thing to acknowledge that yes, you are in a position of privilege and stuff, and you have the ability to give back and stuff.
Totally.
But I feel like it's another thing to one actually act upon it. And also, like, I really like that like what your dad, that whole idea of like having,
you owe the karma bank,
exactly,
right?
and giving back and looking at it in that sense. Like, yes, I'm in a position of privilege and I have that responsibility to actually, like, that is
it's my job to help
exactly,
people, right?
Exactly.
I think a lot of people these days are really confused because I mean, it might just be the capitalistic society that we grew up in, but there's always like, like if I do something good for you, I deserve something back. Like favor for favor, tit for tat, right? But like very few people can kind of wrap their minds around this whole like idea of just giving and just giving and just giving and like asking for nothing in return. And I think, like I'm very, very privileged to have learned that lesson at such a young age and to be able to like give and provide to everyone around me. It's
so funny that you mentioned that, and this idea of just giving without expecting anything in return. I actually did a TED Talk on that. Like, this whole idea of you have a certain purpose in life, and if you have the if you're fortunate enough to find what that purpose is, and you give unconditionally to the universe and to the rest of the world, it's crazy how it works, but the universe somehow even
always
gives you exactly and in tenfold. Like, it doesn't only give it,
and when you need it, and when you need it, yes,
exactly. So it's so nice that you mentioned that. Just a quick one: if you see value in this conversation, I want to take this further and introduce you our weekly newsletter. The goal of the newsletter is to provide resources, opportunities, and show you guys some of the behind the scenes stuff that we have. So if this is of your interest and you want to gain more value from the podcast, I recommend using the link in the description to subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you. Alrighty, so we talked about a lot, and I'm curious to learn more about right now. What is Kumo like, and I guess you do talk about all these different pillars that you have in your life, but what does a day in the life look like?
different. Every day is different.
Yeah.
I mean, I can show you my calendar and you'll be able to get a good
idea. Is it color coded as well?
Everything's color coded.
Same.
It has to be. I'd say, I mean, it really depends on the day, to be honest. Like, I'm not one that does well with, like, I mean, I can do like schedules and stuff, but it's like I love being on the fly, on the go.
Yeah.
Always having something different to do every week or every day, pretty much. So some days, it'll be jam packed with like working on social media stuff, because I also do social media for a couple different like businesses and whatnot. Some days I'll be like working at the school that I work at, SAE, and then other days I'll just be like just be getting ready all day for the show at night, right? So. But it kind of goes back to that thing of like really trying to be cognizant of my time and my energy levels. You know, if I do have a little bit of extra energy and a little bit of extra time, see if I can squeeze in like a little TikTok or something, right? Like try and maximize that time. But it's like there are other days where it's just like I wake up and I'm just like, nope, not gonna happen today, and you just gotta like move everything to schedule to the next day or whatever. So it really depends on the day.
So right now you do multiple things. Mm-hmm. You said you have a day job as well.
Yeah, I do social media for two clients right now.
And that's like you serve on like a consulting basis, sort of like.
No, I'm a content creator for these two groups. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I see. And then DJing obviously. Yeah. And then Kumo.
Yep.
And you said you teach at a school.
Yeah, so I work at a school. I'm like a studio manager for this school called SAE, which is Sound Audio Engineering Institute. It's like a 9-month audio engineering diploma program. I went through the program because like I also wanted to become a better music producer, and then afterwards I was just like, I really like it here. Can you guys give me a job? And so once a week I go there, do some studio night managing. But it's nice because it's like every time I go there, then I just do all the TikTok stuff and like all the social media stuff for them anyway. So it's like 2 jobs in one, right? Yeah.
And are there certain people that you look up to in terms of like role models? I know you talk about your dad being a big one. Mm-hmm. You've had different mentors in your life. Are there any like, I guess, DJs that you look up to or business people that you look up to?
Oh yeah, no, business people, like definitely Gary Vee is a huge influence of mine. Yeah, he's so wise beyond his years, but like it's crazy because it's like he says the 5 same things just in different ways, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So consistency there is like really taught me a lot about, he talks a lot about self-awareness, and it's like that's a lot of where I've like learned about self-awareness. Another place that I get inspiration from is just like my team in general. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like I give them a job, they go 2 steps ahead of the game and like deliver on something like way beyond my expectations. Yeah. And it's like, holy crap. Like I would have never been able to do that. And it inspires me to work harder, seeing everyone on the team work on this passion and this vision that I've created, right? And so just seeing, and it's crazy too, because like they'll work harder than me some days, and it's just like, oh my God, like I can't let them like work harder than me, right? So it inspires me in that sense. And then I guess just in terms of like DJs and musicians and stuff, it's like, I guess it's the people that are like 2-3 steps ahead of me in terms of like my music career, right? Like guys like No Thanks or Nostalgics, you know, who've like really established themselves as professional level DJs who are like going out to play like festivals and stuff. Like that's the whole reason why I started DJing, was to be able to go to festivals and play at festivals. So like seeing those guys and seeing how hard they work, it's like also like a huge inspiration for me.
No, I'm glad that you mentioned that, like all your team, Gary Vee and the DJs that you mentioned. I think that's big. For me, something I struggle with as well is like a lot of the times, like I know I've achieved X, Y, and Z, and I'm super grateful and like honored that I've had the opportunities that I've received. But like deep inside of me, I still have a lot of ambition, and I always like, what, I still have like, this is just a start, sort of, you know.
I'm plagued with that curse too.
And I sometimes struggle because I find myself like comparing, I guess, myself to people that have been part of me in different points in my life, and they have gone on to do amazing things, and it's like I'm inspired by them, but I'm also like, like I still have so much more to do. So how do you face that? How do you deal with that? Like comparing yourself to other people?
It's so natural to compare yourself to other people. Like I compare myself to like other event groups and stuff, or like I compare myself to other DJs, you know. Like right now I'm like in a bit of a drought with DJing, where like there's not a lot of gigs, but I see all my homies getting gigs. I'm like, oh crap, like I need to get a gig or whatever, right? So but I think a lot of it is just like realizing and understanding like where those feelings come from. Like, are they a place of you know, are they a place of, are they coming from a good place, or are they coming from a bad place, right? So like for me, let's go back to the DJ example, like seeing all my other friends get DJ gigs and me not get DJ gigs, like that comes from a place of insecurity, right? Like that means it's like, oh, my friends are getting gigs and I'm not, like I must not be as good a DJ as them, right? But if you like flip it and you realize that it comes from a positive place, like you look at all your friends around you and they're all getting DJ gigs and you're just hyped for them, like that comes from a very, very positive place. So understanding where your thought patterns come from, because obviously like you can't control your feelings, but you can control the way you think. And if you can understand where your thoughts are coming from an emotional level, it'll help you like become very understanding of like who you are as a person and like what you're actually projecting, right? And like whether it's a good thing to project or it's something that you kind of just need to work on inside.
Yeah, I love that. Like that just shows how, I mean, like self-aware you are. It goes back to that, right? Like you really take time to think about those thought patterns. I was literally having a conversation with one of my friends like yesterday, and we had the same conversation. Like there's some times where you get so caught up in that thought pattern that you don't like, you're like, yo, where did this even come from in the first place? Like, why am I in this rabbit hole of like thoughts? You know what I mean? So it's powerful that you say that. I know in one of your interviews you talked about like, I guess what it means to socialize in Vancouver and how like clubbing is really big. The fact that, you know, Vancouver.
Oh yeah, why people club in Vancouver. Yeah.
Exactly, and I thought that was like your take on it was really interesting. Like the fact that Vancouver is an expensive place.
It's too expensive. Yeah.
Exactly, and clubs are one place where people get to socialize, and that's why like that's what people come to do. And what it means to you from your end of thing is to provide them that experience, right?
To a sense,
yeah. Curious to learn more about that.
Okay, yeah. So essentially what it comes down to was I was really trying to target the whole fact, and like this has been a common kind of thought amongst the community, is just like Vancouver has no music culture, right? Like who from Vancouver, like name 3 artists big from Vancouver that like rep Vancouver hard, right? Like, and I think a lot of it has to do with just like the local support. And what I kind of identified, and through like talking to people, I realized like people don't go out to like there's a very few small pocket of people that go out for the music and they go out for a specific artist or whatever, right? But a lot of the times, a lot of people will just go to the club to like get drunk, to meet people, like make new friends, hang out with old friends, celebrate a birthday or whatever. It's like a very, very social aspect of it, right? And then like for me, like after going to like music festivals and stuff and like seeing people there for the music, the reasons why people are there are very, very different, right? And what I noticed more primarily was people was going out to clubs to socialize, or they go out to shows to like see people that they hadn't seen. Like, when's the last time, like, have you ever been to like a DJ show for a local DJ?
No.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And there's like, there's nothing wrong. It's just the culture of Vancouver, right? Like, but like, when's the last time you went to go celebrate a birthday? Yeah. Like 2 weeks ago,
exactly,
right? Yeah. So I kind of identified that, and I just wanted to raise awareness about like why, you know, there is no culture here, and just kind of like put that perspective into people's minds. Like, yeah, like there is a budding, like an emerging artist culture, and everyone says like the music scene's about to like pop in Vancouver, right? But it's not going to happen until I believe that like people are willing to pay for the experience of seeing someone in particular, right? Rather than going to pay for an experience to get drunk and have fun with their friends and like forget about their day job, right? So I think just like that shift needs to happen. But I think it's like it's very possible. Like it's like a lot of the groups are starting to push that kind of mentality, and you are starting to see a little bit of a shift in the community. Like more and more people are going to see like local shows, and like a lot of people are going to go support their local artists and stuff, right? And it's like really is helping the local artist community. At least what I've seen from the electronic music scene. I have no clue what the hip hop scene's like. Yeah. But yeah, no, I just trying to like make people cognizant of that shift, I think.
Yeah. I feel like, I really like how I guess you went down into like the details of why is it that we're in this situation that we are in, you know what I mean? Like a lot of the times, like you can acknowledge that and you can be like, okay, yeah, this is how it is, and it just is, but you go back to like that root cause of like,
it's just too expensive to go party, right? Like you can't like a lot of people can't go to dinner on Wednesday and a party on Friday because they just can't afford it, right? So a lot of people, especially like young kids, like all they want to do is like let loose and get wild, right? But like it's not like, I shouldn't say it's for the wrong reasons. Like I was 19, 20 years old getting drunk every weekend too, like because I wanted to forget about my schooling that I had to do, right? Like, I think it's just a process of like learning why you party, right? Like if you're gonna keep partying just to get drunk, like that may not be the best reason to party. If you're partying to chase girls or guys, that may not also be the best. I mean, time and place, right? Time and place. But if you're always doing it, it's like not a very healthy way to like party.
Exactly. Yeah. You do talk about like you have acknowledged like what the scene is like in Vancouver and that shift that's required. I guess for like an aspiring DJ right now, globally even, or in Canada or in North America, like, what would you say are some things to, I guess, keep in mind? Be it like with DJing, also just like even in like the events industry or starting a business or whatever it is.
Yeah.
What are some like action steps? Be it like building your own like personal brand or whatever it is, or things of that. Like, where would you say, or what are some things that people need to think about entering this industry?
Social media is going to be a part of the job. Like whether you like it or not, it's like you can't, like today's world is just so revolved around just your presence on social media and your ability to create a community on these platforms, right? Like I was actually talking to one of the No Thanks guys, and he was just saying it's like, yeah, the only DJ, like if you're a major like established DJ, like you don't need to worry about it. So if you're like the Bill, or not the Bill Clinton, like the Steve Jobs of EDM music, like people are gonna book you regardless. But for someone like them, it's like it's the make or break point whether they get booked on festivals is whether they're actually active on TikTok, for example, or like whether they're actually making content and stuff. So I'd say for any person that is trying to get into like the music industry or become a DJ or anything, like find a way to integrate social media into your plan. And it's like, if you're not a content creator, if you've never made a video before, just like start, you know? Like I tell everyone who's like, oh, like I can't really do social media. I'm just like, post a story a day. Just that's how you start. It's just a habit, right? Like I'm at a point now where it's like I make like 4 or 5, maybe up to 10 posts a day.
Wow.
But it's like I can get it done in an hour because it's like it's all habit, it's all practice. Like I've gotten really quick with it, right? So, but it's like I'm not saying you have to make like 10 pieces of content for 3 different businesses a day, right? All you need is like 1 photo, 1 video, 1 story. Like if you can do that, like you are going to be ahead of 90% of the industry.
Yeah. And are there like specific, I know you mentioned TikTok, but are there specific like platforms or type of content or things like people should try doing, or some things that you have tried that worked well? Yeah,
I think a lot of people, they use social media as a platform for their ego. I find like a lot of them like brag about what they've done or what they've accomplished and everything that they, it's like, and it becomes a very, very toxic place. And I think that's a lot of the reason why there's a negative association with mental health and social media, is because it's like your polished version of your life, right? And so when you take a look at that, it's very toxic for yourself. But the frame of mind that I've kind of started taking, which I've seen a lot of success in, is like you create to create value for people around you, right?
It's like Gary Vee says.
It's all about creating value, right? For me, I'm starting to try and figure out ways to make videos. Like a lot of my videos now are surrounded around like business tips for DJs. Like how would you get your first club, or like how would you set up a playlist, or like all these sorts of things. And the response on them has been phenomenal. It's been insane. And it really kind of goes to show, it's showing the shift in what social media is nowadays. It's like instead of a highlight reel of your life, the people that are getting shown and pushed are the people who are giving value to people, whether it is through education or entertainment, right? Like me, I'm obviously like educating the people, like trying to teach people how to do things. Like other people are just like naturally funny people, and just watch them and you like have a laugh. And it's like, that's all you need, right?
Yeah.
So it goes back to being self-aware of like who you are as a person, what you want to do, and then creating content based on those 2 things.
And I know when you're describing like social media, you also talked about like, you didn't talk about having a certain following or having certain metrics. You talk about creating a community of people on social media. Tell me more about that, and like how do people approach that with that like community lens?
Well, I think a lot of it is you. Like when I say creating for the community, it's like you have to pay attention to like who's paying attention to you, right? And you create for them. A lot of the time they'll ask you questions. Like on TikTok, for example, like you can respond to questions and like do all that kind of stuff. That is a huge, huge thing that people aren't really taking advantage of, or like a lot of people don't really understand. When I say creating for the community, it's like it's more like you don't really get to choose your community or like who they are, but anyone who interacts with you, you can like. they took the time out of the day, like 3, 4, 5 seconds out of the day to put down a comment. The least that you can do is respond to them with like something else, right? And then make them feel heard or seen, right? Like imagine if like you put a comment on, I don't know, who's your favorite celebrity?
Gary V.
Yeah. You go on to Gary V. Fucking, you just like put a comment on one of his posts and he responds to you. Like, how good is that going to make you feel?
Yeah, it's going to change my life.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So you kind of got to go into the same kind of mind frame. It's just like if someone like interacts with your stuff, they're reaching out because you influence them. And it's like the least you can do is acknowledge that person, right? Exactly. And the more you do that and the more opportunities will present itself to do that, and the bigger your community will grow.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Because it's like, you can go viral, get like 1 million views on a video, your likes or your followers go up like 2,000, but it's like, why did those people follow you?
Exactly. No, I think you couldn't have said it better. We talked about obviously your personal background. We talked about how you grew Kumo and some of the successes you've had with it. Mm-hmm. We talked about your purpose of I guess providing those opportunities for other people and creating that scene. The purpose of the podcast is to obviously inspire people that are starting off and do have a passion in whatever it may be, the arts, music, sports. Mm-hmm. What advice would you have from them just when they're in those initial stages?
The first 3 years are going to feel like failure. No matter what it is. Like the first 3 years of any creative pursuit, any entrepreneurial pursuit, like they are going to suck.
Yeah.
Right? And the only thing that's going to carry you through those 3 years is how much you believe in your vision, right? And the impact of that vision, right? Yeah. Like there was times, I'll take it back, for example, the first year that I did Kumo, I ran empty shows for Library Square, which was like soul crushing, right? Like any sane person would have looked at that and been like, okay, this is not an opportunity that can be like developed. I'm going to try something else, right? Yeah. But for me, it was like, because of like how passionate I was about this idea and like how much like fire I had behind it, I kept trying different things and I kept putting it in different like perspectives and lights and stuff, right? That's why there's 3 versions of Kumo, and it wasn't until the 3rd version where I was like, everything started to click. So just like the first 3 years of your creative pursuit are going to feel like failure, and if you can get through those, like you will see opportunities that'll come out to you in ways that you would never imagine. Like even now, like I like just recently it's like started like people are starting to like, I go out to the clubs and people are like recognizing me out of the blue, and they come up to me and it's like I started Kumo in 2019, it's 2022. Like it took 3 years for that to happen. And like now I'm just like, I don't know what to do. Like I'm part of me is like scared to go to the club because it's like, I don't know who I'm going to see anymore. But it's also I get really excited because you don't know who you're going to meet and you don't know who you're going to interact with. And as long as you have like a really good positive interaction with the people around you, that community is just going to get built more and more.
Exactly. And it's in those moments where you realize like, yo, like I created something that's now like bigger than me itself.
It is,
Like when people start recognizing you and people start like, yo, like I'm part of this community that you create. I think that's so powerful. And
totally. And it's weird because it's like I'm still in the mind frame of where I was 3 years ago, like grinding, building, like trying to make the vision work. And it's like the only difference, like I'm still in the same mind work.
Yeah.
The only difference is like people are starting to recognize what we're doing.
Yeah. No, I'm so happy to hear that and see that you're able to have that impact. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I really appreciate you sharing your story. I think there's so many people that are sort of starting off and they'll take a lot of value from it. And I just appreciate you sharing your story and being vulnerable and also super inspired.
Thank you. I honestly, I appreciate you giving me the platform, the space to be able to talk about myself. And I really do hope that, people do get inspired by this because, like if it wasn't for me being inspired by the people above me and the people that did teach me, I wouldn't be where I was today. So hopefully I can do that for someone who's listening today.
It will for sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you are as inspired by this conversation as I was. If you'd like to follow our journey and learn more about some of the other episodes, I encourage all of you to check out our social media platforms at Leaders of Today Pod. That is at Leaders of Today Pod. Before we end, I want to remind you that as young people, we're not only the leaders of tomorrow, but we're the leaders of today.